Sometimes we still get things in the mail. When folks tell me what's on their mind and what's important to them, my title is state representative. So it's my job to represent folks in the district, in the Wisconsin State Assembly, and try to solve problems and work hard for the people who sent me there.
Again, we're chatting with Will Penterman here on Community Comment today, the Republican candidate for Wisconsin Assembly District 38. And something we have highlighted here a couple times already is the redistricting that took place here in the last time that you have campaigned to be elected here into the State Assembly. Previously was District 37, now will be 38. Just speak to what that is like for somebody in your position who had represented a district with the old maps and old territory. Now that's entirely new. And how has that been like in terms of campaigning and getting out there and introducing yourself? And what's your hopes and goals if you're reelected in terms of representing this newly formed Assembly District 38?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's my third time running, third completely new district. That's just kind of the political situation that it is. So I take great pride in going door to door and introducing myself personally to individuals. I'm old-fashioned like that. You're not going to see me on TV. So it's the personal touch, going up to someone at their house, going to community events, asking folks, hey, what's on your mind? What should my priorities be? If I'm fortunate enough to be reelected. But a lot of the concerns I've heard from folks really stem from a few things. One is the cost of living and the effects of inflation. That the cost of nearly everything has gone up significantly over the last 4 years, and a lot of that has to do with things that are beyond our state's control. There are things that are happening on the federal, the national, and the global level. In Wisconsin, we can't print our own money, and we do have a balanced budget requirement that we can't deficit spend. We have to take more money in than we spend. And maintaining that responsibility, that good fiscal responsibility down in Madison, that we have a biennial budget, which means we pass a new budget every 2 years. But if for some reason we weren't able to pass a new budget, the state government doesn't shut down. We don't default. None of that happens, but the state government remains open. We just continue on the previous budget's fiscal appropriations. So basically, the status quo would continue. That hasn't happened in quite some time. We continue to pass new budgets every biennium, investing in super important areas. Education, our kids are our future. How can we make smart investments where we can get the best bang for our buck to make sure our kids are set up for the future and set up for success. To be our leaders of tomorrow. Roads and infrastructure, super, super important. We all drive on our roads, and we all use them. And there's something that, whether it's state highways, county highways, local roads in municipalities, local roads out in the countries that are used by the ag community. It's super important that they have appropriate and good infrastructure that they can use to keep the economy going. And finally, crime. It's something we've fortunately seen come down a little bit, but we've seen some unfortunate rise in crime over the last 4 years, and we all want to live in safe communities. So this past session, I'll just briefly touch on something we worked on and we got passed, was a amendment to our Wisconsin State Constitution where judges will now have the ability to look at a convicted criminal's previous conviction history when determining bail amounts. So basically the poster individual for this is Mr. Darrell Brooks out of Milwaukee that he beat up his girlfriend and he had a really inappropriately low bail, and then he got out, and unfortunately we all know what happened in Waukesha. If the judge were able to look at his past conviction history, it's very possible that the Waukesha tragedy wouldn't have happened. This isn't going to prevent all crimes, but it's a common sense step forward that when there are dangerous individuals who should be behind bars, that's where they are.
Again, we're chatting with Will Penterman here on Community Comment today, and one thing I just want to have a follow-up question to. You mentioned that being fiscally responsible, being good stewards of taxpayer dollars is a key component for you, as well as improving infrastructure and making sure that things are operating the way they should be. How do you, in your position, how do you balance making sure taxes don't increase and that they're at a good place for middle-class families and people who live in rural areas here in our community versus making sure that there are funds available to be able to fix our roads, to be able to pay out dollars to help infrastructure throughout the municipalities, throughout the state of Wisconsin? How do you balance those two things? Because it's tough to improve one without impacting the other, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a delicate balance. We all want good roads and bridges, but we also don't want an overburden, tax burden on the taxpayers, on our retirees, and on working families as well. We want to make sure that Wisconsin is an affordable state to live, work, raise a family, and retire. It's important to make those proper investments. I will say that from this past session, one of the good pieces of legislation we got done that I'm very proud of is the shared revenue reform. That now, basically, in a nutshell, shared revenue is the amount of money that local municipalities receive from the state to fund critical services like firefighting, EMS, repairing roads and bridges, and other critical infrastructure. And basically that formula had remained pretty stagnant over the years, but now going forward, the amount that our municipalities are going to get is directly tied to a percentage of the Wisconsin sales tax. So as the Wisconsin economy continues to grow, hopefully by leaps and bounds over the next several decades, that amount that our local municipalities will be increasing as well, that they can then turn around and provide EMS firefighting services and repair our local roads.
You'd mentioned a couple times that you are in, when available, obviously the last couple of weeks it's been busy with campaigning, but outside of that, when time allows, you serve as a substitute teacher in our area here. I want to ask about education funding in general. That's been always kind of a hot button issue here lately. And do you feel like there is enough support from the state being given out to districts throughout the state of Wisconsin to support not only student learning, but to support teachers? And obviously we've been seeing increasing class sizes. And do we need to allocate more help towards fixing these issues, or do you feel like things are at a good place right now?
Yeah, so it's super, super important to have good quality teachers in the classroom teaching our kids. Super important that they are making an adequate wage in which they're able to support their families as well. Our schools, unfortunately, are not immune from the effects of inflation, and they're dealing with rising costs as well. So it's an across the board problem. Here in Wisconsin, I'm very proud to say that over the past few years, since I've been elected, it wasn't me entirely, so I can't take all the credit, but we have reached that 2/3 funding threshold. That it's kind of been the gold standard of if the state provides 2/3 funding to our local school districts, that's historically been the gold standard. So I'm very, very proud to say that we're there. And there's also a whole bunch of other really important educational reforms that just really make sense. And we have that teacher shortage, and salary is a part of the equation, but it's not the only thing. There's an individual who's very near and dear to me that when she graduated from college, on her cap and gown, the phrase she had on her cap and gown was "Teaching is a work of heart." Because you have to, your heart has to be in it in order to do it. So one thing that I specifically looked at this year, and to get more qualified teachers into the teaching profession sooner, is what's called a 2+2 model. So basically, the traditional way we have students who want to be teachers enter the teaching profession is they go to college, university for 4 years, and then they do 1 semester of student teaching, and that's. I suppose it's had some results, but sometimes you got to think outside the box. Mm-hmm. So the 2+2 model, basically, the aspiring teacher spends 2 years at college or university, learning education theory, classroom management, and certain academic things. But then the aspiring teacher spends 2 years in the classroom as a student teacher, with the kids under the supervision of a teacher already there, learning those things that you can't learn from a textbook. You can't learn, classroom management and how to, how to become the most effective teacher just from a textbook. You can't do that. There's also some federal money available. So under this bill, those teachers would be able to also be paid for their time as a student teacher. So unfortunately, that bill didn't quite make it across the finish line this year. The governor vetoed it, but I think that's another good opportunity going forward this next session and beyond. That's the cool thing about state government is we can look at what other states have done well and how can we emulate that here in Wisconsin. We've seen this work in both Republican-led states and Democrat-led states as a game changer to get more young teachers into the profession sooner.
Again, we're chatting with Will Penterman here on Community Comment today, the Republican incumbent in what was once the Assembly District 37, will be moving forward, the Wisconsin Assembly District 38. And Will, you have always been a strong supporter of law enforcement and the work that they do. Looking back, is this something that you hope to continue to maybe introduce more support in terms of the bills or funding if reelected into the state assembly?
Yeah, 100%. So it's super, super important that just, from a messaging standpoint and also just from a value standpoint that we are supporting our law enforcement officers. The vast majority of our law enforcement officers, the brave men and women who put on the uniform, they are good, honest people who are trying to do the absolute best that they can to protect and serve and uphold our laws here in Wisconsin and in their communities. My first session, when we had a bunch of ARPA money floating around, I had introduced legislation that would give new law enforcement officers who wanted to enter the profession a bonus, because we've seen, unfortunately, it's been a decline of law enforcement officers, and there's a lot of vacant positions where they're not seeing the number of applicants for a position that they once were. So it's something I tried to generate more interest and more spark for folks. Unfortunately, that didn't quite make it across the finish line either. But I do think that there's more that can be done to support our law enforcement officers. They have a really, really tough job. It's a tough job that not everyone can do. So they certainly need our support from the state level. I'd like to see support for them from the national level. From all of our elected officials. It shouldn't be a nonpartisan or it shouldn't be a partisan thing to support our law enforcement officers, because overall they do a really, really good job.
We are wrapping up our time here with Will Penterman on Community Comment. In the final few moments that we have with his time here today, I want to ask him why, when voters head to the polls on November 5th, should they put down Will Penterman for Wisconsin Assembly District 38?
Yeah, so I've been working really, really hard for the folks who sent me to Madison. This job certainly has its challenges as well, but I've been working really, really hard. Last session, I introduced over 30 pieces of legislation, 8 of which were passed by the Assembly and the Senate, and were signed into law by the governor, including a couple things we didn't get to quite today: personal financial literacy, school bus safety, and just other things that make our state government work smarter and more efficiently. It's not always the things that make the headlines with a lot of the state papers or whatnot, but they're small incremental changes that make our state government work a little bit smarter and a little bit harder. I really love what I do. Between being in the Army Reserve and a substitute teacher, it keeps me well grounded, and it's all about service for me. And I'd be honored to continue serving the great folks of Southern Dodge County and Northern Jefferson County in the state assembly.
I want to thank our guest here in our first segment of Community Comment today, the Republican incumbent and candidate for Wisconsin Assembly District 38, Will Penterman. Will, thank you again so much for coming in and talking with us today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.
And another just a quick programming note, the Democratic candidate, Izzy Hassi Narvaez, we are still trying to get something booked on community comment with him. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks we can get something on the calendar and have him join in and talk about issues that are important to him in his campaign for Wisconsin Assembly District 38. Also a programming note, coming up in our second segment of community comment today, we will be joined with the Democratic candidate for Wisconsin Congressional District 6 race. That is John Zarbano. He is our second guest again on community comment. We have to take a short break, but more community comment is coming up next.
Here's our news director, Kevin Haugen.
Well, thank you very much, and welcome back into today's community comment. Again, I'm your host, Kevin Haugen. In our first segment, again, we had the opportunity to talk with Will Penterman on community comment, the Republican candidate for Wisconsin Assembly District 38 here in the state of Wisconsin. In our second segment now, it is my pleasure to welcome into the conversation the Democratic candidate for Wisconsin Congressional District 6. My guest again here on Community Comment today, John Zarbano. John, thank you so much for taking the time to come in and talk with us today.
Thank you, Kevin, for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Fantastic. Looking forward to diving into a lot of the issues that are important to you and the reasons why you are running for a congressional seat here. But before we do that, John, I want to give you the opportunity to tell us a little bit more about yourself. I want to ask about your work experience, your home life, hobbies, service organization affiliations. The next couple of minutes are yours. Just tell us who John Zarbano is.
Okay, well, first off, I live in Oshkosh, and this is my first ever political race. And I was born in Omaha, and got my bachelor's and master's from the University of Nebraska, Omaha, and my law degree from the University of Tulsa. I practiced law in Tulsa as a bank lawyer, and met my wife, Merlane, as a native of Marinette. I'm a Wisconsinite by marriage. Okay. And so
And now by choice, right?
And now by choice, because we came home to Wisconsin in 1998 to be near her parents, and Wisconsin's been my home ever since. We raised two sons. Nick and his wife Beth and the two grandchildren live in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and their favorite place on the planet is Wisconsin Dells. And oh yeah, every summer. And so, but our eldest son, Tony, was diagnosed with brain cancer, terminal brain cancer, during his second year in medical school. And so after 3 craniotomies at MD Anderson and Houston and 10 years of chemotherapy, he passed away. The reason I'm bringing this up is because we had to wrestle with Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid to get him the medical treatment he needed. This was a time before Obamacare, and he had a flimsy school health insurance policy, and went through that cap rather quickly. So after he died, I asked myself the question, and this is how I got started in this: if I want health care, why am I buying in health insurance? Why don't I buy health care? So I came up with Healthcare of Wisconsin. It is an idea that provides, it's more than an idea, it's a plan, it's a statutory plan that provides direct medical services for folks under 65. They're not covered by Social Security, Medicare or Medicaid or VA. These are typically the folks that are have private health insurance. And so I came up with this plan. This plan takes the insurance company, the health insurance company, out of the equation so that the patients through the state of Wisconsin deal directly with the healthcare providers. If you take an entire industry out of the healthcare equation, you save a lot of money. This plan has been vetted by former chair of the economics department at University of Wisconsin Oshkosh, and I even enlisted the aid of Republicans in the state legislature and had my plan critiqued by the Wisconsin Legislative Reference Bureau. So this plan will work. Unfortunately, it is not a plan favored by health insurance companies. As One Republican lawmaker said they would act as though their hair were on fire. So this is something that is a state level plan, and this complements the Affordable Care Act, and I am hoping that to draw up a statute similar to that allows the states to enact this sort of plan. I have reviewed in the past. I've reviewed Colorado's and Massachusetts and other plans that provide universal health care, and this one's better. Of course it is. It's mine.
No bias whatsoever.
No, none whatsoever, sir.
Fantastic. Again, we're chatting with John Zarbano here on Community Comment today. A quick programming note: the Republican candidate, incumbent in the Wisconsin Congressional District 6, Glenn Grothman, joined us Monday on Community Comment. We'll be sure to post that interview as well as our interview today with John Zarbano to our web pages after our interview concludes today. And John, it's very interesting. You brought up this. I'm hoping I wrote this down correctly, and I'm saying that it's Healthcare for Wisconsin.
Healthcare of Wisconsin.
Healthcare of Wisconsin.
It's got its own website, and the website is johnzarbano.com. No, excuse me, that's zarbanos.com. My campaign website is johnzarbano.com.
Gotcha.
So it's got its Healthcare of Wisconsin.
And so not to, again, put words in your mouth, but this is, it can clearly tell, such an important issue near and dear to your heart. It sounds like this is what ultimately spurred you to throw your hat into the ring, so to speak, and run for a congressional seat, is to see these changes happen on a wider scale and get changes impacted here in the state of Wisconsin.
That's correct. That's what started me along the political path. But the trigger was, of course, the armed insurrection on January 6, 2021. And that armed insurrection proved President Reagan's statement that freedom is only one generation away from extinction. And so that's when I decided I had to get involved.
And back quickly to this Healthcare of Wisconsin plan. You mentioned that you'd gone through a lot of peer reviews. You've done a lot of work here now, essentially, before even getting elected into any sort of political seat here. And obviously, the tough thing about getting any sort of bill or changes enacted into law is getting partisan support, getting both sides of the aisles to come together. And it sounds like you've had some work in that capacity, but do you feel like there's still more work to get done if you get elected and to get this plan into place here?
We have to. There is a gridlock in Congress because of the my way or the highway culture that has settled into D.C. And we have to work together to get problems solved. We have monumental challenges facing us as a nation, and we've got to solve them. And to be tribal about it and say, well, we're all going to vote against it, doesn't get the job done, and we need to do that. We have so many issues to take care of.
I feel like we could spend our entire time talking about this Healthcare of Wisconsin plan, but I want to touch on some other really key and important issues, John, that are key platforms that you're running on here and campaigning here for Wisconsin Congressional District 6. Another one is that you have always claimed you're a champion of workers' rights and the rights to unionize. And could you just expand on what you are envisioning if elected into the 6th Congressional District here in Wisconsin?
Sure thing. First off, unions go deep in my family. Before World War II, my dad was a railroad with the Union Pacific, railroad worker in the Union Pacific in Omaha, Nebraska. But going forward, future, we always have to look toward the future. We need to pass the protection of the right to organize, the PRO Act. This PRO Act it reinforces the National Labor Relations Act for the unionization and gives workers the right to organize, and puts teeth into the penalties for the employers that prevent that. A case in point was down in Alabama. I think it was. I'm not going to say where who the employer was, but they actually had mandatory, lengthy meetings with the workers to tell them not to unionize, and the disadvantages. Excuse me. They can't tell them not to unionize, but they can say these are the disadvantages of having a union. And so that meant that the organizers had to catch them in the parking lot during shift changes. So what this employer did is that it had the city, the municipality, change the timing on the lights, the traffic lights, so as to disrupt the flow of traffic from in and out of the plant. So those types of actions violate the National Labor Relations Act and gives the NLRB some enforcement tools that they do not have now. So we have to pass that, and we have to support the Department of Labor's jobs division. Their job division, their division of jobs program. Sorry about that.
No, hey, I forget. You'd be surprised how often I forget. I get a word in my head, and the ability to get it to my mouth and out is sometimes lost.
I know.
That happens all the time. But another thing, John, that you'd mentioned is that unions increase the standard of living for the middle class and decrease reliance upon government services.
That's correct, because once the middle class is strong, I'm going to call it the first class, because we need the middle class to be strong, the first class to be strong. The one thing that we're going to be faced with in 2025 is the expiration of the Trump tax cuts. So we have to allow for a tax cut to the middle class so that they can get strong, then they can keep going on the economy. And that means that they have less reliance on government programs for things that they need. So that's what's going to happen next year.
And now, John, is that one way you see combating the issues that we're seeing now with inflation and the cost of living and how difficult it is now for families to be able to afford just the simplicities of life, like groceries, a gallon of gas? It all ties into one another in this capacity here? That
is correct. Just to sum up the economy for the consumer, it's two words: gas and groceries.
Yeah, exactly.
And gas has been falling for the past 2 years. It's now just above $3 a gallon. But the groceries, for some reason, have a sticking point, and they have not decreased. And the reason for this should be how can I say it without blaming them? Sellers inflation.
Sure.
Sellers inflation. So when I'm in Congress, I'm going to ask the grocery industry, and they shine a light on it, why are you making record profits while selling us less food? And to put this in perspective, the Kroger, the grocery industry giant, made like $2.1 billion in 2023, and surpassed that by July of 2024. And to put it even more closely in perspective, the CEO of Kroger made on based on a 40-hour week, made approximately $7,500 an hour, while your typical Kroger worker was earning $15 an hour. So I'm just going to shine a light on their pricing structure, and there is a law out there that has been introduced that is the Price Gouging Prevention Act, and this allows the Federal Trade Commission to examine and evaluate the pricing structures of all sellers.
Again, we're joined with John Zarbano here on Community Comment. He is the Democratic candidate for Wisconsin Congressional District 6. Again, quick note that the Republican incumbent, Glenn Grothman, joined us Monday. We'll post both our interviews with Glenn as well as John Zarbano here after our Community Comment today. Another key component and issue, John, that I want to highlight here while we have you on Community Comment today is education and a lack of public education funding. Is that something that you hope to address and shine another light on?
Yes, I'm going to shine a light on that because, and I understand that education is a Wisconsin state issue. However, for the past 20 years, the education crisis in the United States has been called a national security risk, not by just one individual or group. It has been by the Cato Institute, it has been by the Foreign Council, and the American Enterprise Institute. Simply stated, the recruits for the Army have been denied because they can't read. So I have in mind a project that solves, and I would want to have a pilot program run by the Department of Education at the federal level to address both ends. And I'm just going to talk first off about the young children, the 4K plan. I would have the Department of Education develop a pilot program for Wisconsin for early childhood education and daycare. We have a number of buildings in the 6 CD that would be readily available for daycare and early childhood education facilities. These facilities would be run as institutes, and it would solve the problem of daycare, the cost of daycare, address the issue of early childhood education, and prepare our children to have them enter into kindergarten. So this would have the effect of, for example, one person that I talked to pays $500 a week in childcare. This would allow that person to save $500 a week or spend it on something else. And their children would be taken care of and educated. Also, the daycare workers and the teachers would be compensated as state employees, as with full benefits. So it solves a number of issues at the same time: teacher shortage, teacher pay, child care, childhood education. I think that this plan would benefit and alleviate the education crisis in the U.S.
And is there a component then for higher education levels too then?
This would be for something, this is on the other end.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes,
on
absolutely.
the other end. Then we would have, this is more, instead of DPI, this would fall within the Department of Workforce Development, whereby you have 2 years of training post-secondary, post-high school, whereby it's either with a technical college or an academic associate's degree, or apprenticeships. Some of the teenagers I've talked to, say, "School's not for me. I'm a carpenter. I want to build something." Then we can get that person and those folks into apprenticeships, and so you have a three-prong education system that again is publicly funded, but it has trades, technical and academic education, and that way it increases the workforce and cuts down on student debt, which stands now at $1.74 trillion.
Another important issue, John, that you've highlighted here on websites that people can go to and check out is the importance of clean air and clean water. I know it's an issue that a lot of farmers out here, it's near and dear to their heart, but what are some of the plans, or what do you hope to achieve if elected into Congress?
Okay, there's pending legislation in Congress right now, because the farmers I talk to around the 6CD say repeatedly to me, "You take care of the soil will take care of you." Mm-hmm. And so the such programs of the Soil Care Act, the Healthy Soil, Healthy Climate Act, those are education and land management, crop management that allows farmers to deal with the extremes in weather that we have now are experiencing due to climate change. All I have to say about climate change is Helene and Milton, and everybody will grasp that. So these programs end up with taking the carbon out of the air. They end up with cleaner air and cleaner water. One additional pending legislation is requiring the large dairy farms and feeding farms to install their own wastewater and waste treatment facilities on site. And so that would definitely clean up the water.
Just have a couple of more minutes left here on today's community comment. Again, with our guest John Zarbano, the Democratic candidate for Wisconsin Congressional District number 6 here in Wisconsin. With that time left, John, just want to again turn the mic over to you and just ask when voters head to the polls on November 5th, why should they mark down John Zarbano for Congressional District number 6?
I look forward, not backward. My opponent has been in politics for 30 years, 10 years in Congress, and he wants to go back to the 1960s. I want to go forward. I want to clean up our air, our water. I want to educate our children. We have to provide for defense. We have to provide for Social Security and Medicare. We have so many challenges facing us now that we have to give up and do away with the solely partisan politics that are practiced now in Washington. We have to get these jobs done, and I can lead in bipartisan working out deals because I've already done that. And so if you care about the climate, if you care about women's rights, if you care about workers' rights, if you care about educating your children, vote Zarbano, John Zarbano, for Congress.
And with that note, I want to thank again our guest here on today's community comment in our second segment, John Zarbano, the Democratic candidate for Wisconsin Congressional District number 6. John, thank you again so much for joining us on Community Comment.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, and that will do it for today's community comment.
The 7-time